Welcome to the arena. There's something arresting about the image that opens, daring greatly, an old quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It describes a dusty, noisy arena. In the middle of it stands a man, bloodied and sweaty, who has dared to show up and fight. Around him, the crowd roars. Some cheer. Many criticize, but they are merely spectators. Only the man in the arena matters, because he chose courage over comfort. This moment, this quote, changed Brené Brown's life. It gave her research direction. It turned her curiosity about human connection, shame, and vulnerability into something bold and actionable. That single quote became the soul of her message. Daring greatly doesn't mean you always win. It means you're willing to show up, even when the outcome is uncertain, especially when it is. In Daring Greatly, Brown offers something different from your typical self-help book. There are no hollow promises or fake positive mantras. Instead, she invites readers to face uncomfortable truths about shame, fear, disconnection, and the emotional armor we all wear. But more importantly, she offers a roadmap for living differently, for showing up fully in relationships, in parenting, in work, in leadership, and in our own hearts. This book is a call to arms for anyone tired of holding back. It's not a guide to being fearless. It's a challenge to be brave, even when we are scared out of our minds. And make no mistake, we all are. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's power in motion. One of the boldest claims Brown makes is that vulnerability, the very thing we try hardest to avoid, is actually the truest form of courage. Most people have grown up associating vulnerability with weakness. We think being vulnerable means exposing ourselves to judgment, rejection, or failure. And yes, it does. But Brené flips the script. Vulnerability isn't about being weak, it's about being real. It's the emotional risk we take when we show our true selves. It's the moment you say, "I love you" first, not knowing if it will be said back. It's when you raise your hand in a meeting to pitch a wild idea. It's when you say, "I'm sorry," or "I need help," or "I messed up." All of that takes tremendous strength. What makes vulnerability so complicated is that we value it deeply in other people. We admire those who are open, raw, and brave, but we fear it in ourselves. Brown calls this the vulnerability paradox. We cheer when someone else is authentic, but we shame ourselves for even thinking about it. Our culture glorifies emotional control, perfection, and stoicism. But what we're really doing is building walls between ourselves and the people we love. Vulnerability is the glue that holds relationships together, the birthplace of creativity, innovation, intimacy, and trust. Without it, everything meaningful stays on the surface. The silent power of shame. If vulnerability is the gateway to real connection, then shame is the locked door that keeps us from walking through. Shame is one of the most misunderstood emotions, and it's one that Brené has studied deeply. Most of us don't even recognize when shame is at play because it wears so many disguises: anger, withdrawal, defensiveness, perfectionism. But at its core, shame is the intensely painful feeling that we are flawed and, therefore, unworthy of love and belonging. Unlike guilt, which is about behavior, "I did something bad," shame is about identity, "I am bad." And that distinction matters. Shame is universal. If you're alive, you've experienced it. And yet, it's a subject most people avoid because it feels toxic and uncomfortable. But the problem is, what we don't talk about, we can't heal. Shame thrives in silence, secrecy, and judgment. It grows stronger when hidden. Brown explains how shame affects our mental health, our relationships, our work, and even the way we parent. It's the voice in our head that whispers we're not enough, not smart enough, not thin enough, not successful enough, not good enough. The way to disarm shame isn't through avoidance, it's through empathy. When we have the courage to talk about our shame with someone who responds with compassion instead of judgment, it begins to lose its power. The antidote to shame is being seen, heard, and understood. Vulnerability is what gets us there. Emotional armor, what we wear to survive, and why it's not working. To cope with shame and fear, most of us develop what Brown calls emotional armor. These are the behaviors and mindsets we adopt to protect ourselves from feeling exposed. They work for a while, but eventually they start to isolate us from the very experiences we crave: connection, joy, purpose, belonging. Perfectionism is one of the most common forms of armor. It's the belief that if we look perfect, act perfect, and achieve perfectly, then we can avoid criticism and blame. But perfectionism is not the same as striving for excellence. It's rooted in fear. Fear of being seen as flawed. Fear of being found out. It's exhausting. And it's a lie. Then there's numbing, another popular shield. Whether it's with food, shopping, alcohol, social media, workaholism, or endless distractions, we all have ways of avoiding the discomfort of vulnerability. But numbing doesn't just dull pain, it dulls joy. We can't selectively numb emotions. When we shut down vulnerability, we shut down love, creativity, and connection too. Some people put on cynicism as their armor. It's safer to mock others, stay sarcastic, or act above it all than to risk being sincere. Others rely on control over their emotions, their image, their environment. But Brown points out that no matter which armor you wear, it all leads to the same place: disconnection, fatigue, and the slow erosion of your authenticity. Wholehearted living, imperfect and brave on purpose. So, what's the alternative to living behind armor? Brené introduces a concept she calls wholehearted living. It's not about being fearless or always confident. It's about being deeply committed to living with courage, compassion, and connection. Wholehearted people aren't people who have it all figured out. They're people who embrace their vulnerability and show up fully, even when it's uncomfortable. Wholehearted living starts with believing we are worthy of love, of belonging, of rest, of joy, just as we are. That's easier said than done, especially in a world that constantly tells us to hustle for our worth. But Brown says this belief isn't a luxury. It's the foundation for everything else. When we start from a place of worthiness, we can let go of perfectionism. We can speak up when we're afraid. We can ask for what we need. We can give others the freedom to be imperfect too. This kind of living takes practice. It takes setting boundaries, saying no when needed, asking for help, forgiving ourselves, and choosing gratitude over scarcity. It's messy, but it's real. And real is where connection lives. The vulnerability hangover, the price of showing up. There's a moment that often comes right after an act of vulnerability, and Brené calls it the vulnerability hangover. It's that flood of regret and panic. Why did I say that? What if they think I'm weak? That was too much. You might feel like hiding under your bed with a bag of chips and never showing your face again. But here's the truth. If you're feeling that, it means you were brave. You showed up. You were in the arena. The vulnerability hangover is a sign that you did something that mattered. Maybe you shared a story you've kept secret. Maybe you expressed feelings you usually suppress. Maybe you admitted you needed help. And maybe someone didn't respond the way you hoped. That's okay, because the point isn't the outcome, it's the act of showing up. Brown reminds us again and again that courage is about the willingness to be seen. The only way to avoid vulnerability hangovers is to live in emotional hiding. And that's no way to live. Workplace vulnerability, leading with whole hearts. One of the most surprising parts of daring greatly is how applicable it is to leadership and professional life. Brené argues that vulnerability isn't just a personal tool, it's essential for effective leadership. That might sound counterintuitive in a world where many leaders are trained to avoid emotion and appear invulnerable. But Brown shows, with clarity and data, that the best leaders are the ones who are willing to be real. Leadership, at its core, is about holding space for hard conversations. It's about modeling honesty, asking for feedback, admitting when we don't know something, and making space for others to speak freely. When leaders create a culture where vulnerability is safe, people become more creative, more engaged, and more loyal. When shame is used as a motivator, through public criticism, micromanagement, or fear-based tactics, people shut down. They stop innovating. They stop caring. Brown encourages organizations to shift from a shame-based culture to a courageous one. That means prioritizing trust over control, curiosity over blame, and empathy over silence. It's not always comfortable, but it works. Parenting with courage, raising wholehearted kids. As a mother herself, Brené brings deep empathy and urgency to the section on parenting. She believes that how we parent is deeply shaped by how we see ourselves. Children don't need perfect parents. They need engaged parents. They need to be seen, heard, and loved without conditions. We can tell our kids they're enough all day long, but if we don't believe it about ourselves, they'll learn to doubt it too. Brown emphasizes the importance of modeling vulnerability, of showing our children that it's okay to not have all the answers, that apologizing is a strength, that failure is part of growth, that feelings are to be felt, not feared. Raising resilient children means creating a home where shame doesn't get the last word. It means celebrating effort over outcome, validating feelings instead of minimizing them, and being present even when things get messy. Vulnerability isn't weakness in parenting, it's leadership, belonging, connection, and the power of being seen. At the deepest level, daring greatly is about something we all crave: connection. We are wired for love, for community, for belonging. And yet, we so often feel alone. Brown writes that true belonging doesn't come from changing who we are to fit in. It comes from being fully ourselves and finding acceptance anyway. This requires risk, because being seen in our truest form means others might reject us, but it also means they might embrace us. That's the gamble, and it's worth it. When we find places and people where we can be vulnerable and still be loved, we discover a kind of belonging that heals, a connection that fuels joy. But it starts with us. We can't wait for others to offer acceptance. We must be willing to go first, to be honest, to take the emotional risk, to create the kind of spaces we wish existed. Final thoughts: daring always. So what does it mean to dare greatly? It doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind or seeking drama. It means waking up every day and choosing courage over comfort. It means showing up even when you're scared, even when you might fail, even when people might judge you. It means standing in the arena of your own life and saying, I'm here. I'm all in. Brené Brown's message is not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming brave, about being willing to feel deeply, speak honestly, and connect truly. We can keep hiding. We can keep numbing. We can keep pretending. Or we can live fully, messily, beautifully. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people willing to live and love with their whole hearts. So step in. The arena is waiting.